No, I'm going to discuss it on the podcast. Never mind.
Okay.
Never mind. I'm going to keep it a secret.
All right, you want to do the clap this time? We'll alternate from here.
Okay, sounds good.
Oh, do that again. Come on.
Okay, that was terrible.
There we go.
Forceful.
Hello, everyone. Welcome once again to Editing the Academy. I'm Daryl.
I'm Laura.
And Ms. Laura, what is the year that we're talking about, and what are the films?
We are talking about the films that were given the Academy Award in 1977 that were produced and released is the word I'm looking for in 1976. My God, can we do that over?
No, you are off to a fantastic
I really
start.
am. Okay.
And what are the films?
The films are Bound for Glory, Network, All the President's Men, Taxi Driver, and Rocky. All
right, we should mention right up front, and I'll do the thing real quick. We could not find Bound for Glory anywhere. It was even finding it DVD on Amazon.
Couldn't do it.
Yeah, so our apologies. We tried really hard. We did cheating things that we're probably not supposed to talk about, but
exactly.
Couldn't even find it there. So anybody who knows of this film, please let us know, because we really like to watch it, because it was nominated for a ton of stuff.
Well, and I saw the trailer on YouTube.
Yep,
and
there's
there were
clips.
like 2 or 3 scenes on YouTube, but the movie as an entity has disappeared.
Yeah. So let's bust that one out real quick, because we unfortunately didn't watch it, but we'll give you the info anyway. Bound for Glory was directed by Hal Ashby, loosely adapted by Robert Getchell from Woody Guthrie's 1943 partially fictionalized autobiography called also Bound for Glory. It stars David Carradine as Woody Guthrie, Ronnie Cox, Melinda Dillon, Gail Strickland, John Laney, L-E-H-N-E, I apologize, Zhu Tu, and Randy Quaid. It was nominated for Best Picture, Best Screenplay, Best Cinematography, Best Costume Design, Best Film Editing, Best Original Song Score, and it won for Score and Cinematography. And that's the one that made me really kind of curious to see it, because cinematography is such a big part of it.
Yeah. The other thing I'll throw in is the only other one we couldn't find was a foreign film.
Yeah.
So, like, listening to that director and that cast, the fact we can't find it's kind of surprising.
I know. I was really surprised, completely surprised. Anyway, so that's Bound for Glory. Once again, please let us know if you have seen it, if there's a place that you can actually see it that we may have missed or something. So there you go, Bound for Glory. Sorry. All right, what do you want to start with?
Let's start with All the President's Men, alphabetically.
Okay. Let me find, there we go. All right, All the President's Men, directed by Alan J. Pakula, with screenplay by William Goldman. We've had things with him before. Based on the 1974 nonfiction book of the same name by Carl Bernstein and Bob Woodward. And is directed, stars Dustin Hoffman, Robert Redford, Jack Warden, Martin Balsam, Hal Holbrook, and Jason Robard. So quite the stellar male cast, anyway. It was nominated for Best Picture, Best Director, Best Supporting Actor, Best Supporting Actress, because I think there was only like 2 women in the entire thing.
Right, it was William Holden's ex-wife.
Yep. Best Screenplay, Best Art Direction, Best Film Editing, Best Sound. One for Sound, Art Direction, Screenplay, and Jason Robard's one for Supporting Actor. Fun facts.
Fun facts are, this is the film that introduced the phrase, follow the money.
Yes.
So I did not know that. I thought that was interesting. And the other fun fact is, obviously, it's based on the book by Woodward and Bernstein. It only shows half of the book. The rest of the book is shown in the headlines throughout the end of the movie, where the movie ends. So the book follows from the beginning all the way to the end of Nixon resigning. And they decided that just the half the book would do for a movie.
So we'll definitely get to the ending, because
Yes.
that's a little jarring when it happens. But I have a fun fact for you.
Bring it.
The scene, it's halfway through the movie where the head of the paper, Jason Robard's character, is talking to them, and they're deciding whether or not to run with the piece, because there are some questions of the legitimacy of the information.
Right.
They don't think they have enough sources, and he decides to go ahead and have them run it anyway. And he turns around and walks away. And as he's walking through the newsroom, you're seeing him walk away, so it's from their perspective. And he does a quick knuckle tap on one of the desks, apparently. And Jason did not know this, but the actual real-life guy he was portraying did that all the time.
Oh, how funny. Okay, Bill Bradley, I love that.
Okay.
Fun fact.
So what do you... I'm going to start, actually. I told you before going into this one that I was a little trepidatious because this is a movie that was very dear to me,
Yes.
that I remembered loving. I had not seen it in probably 10 or 15 years. Having gone through and watched a lot of films again by doing this podcast, many of them have fallen.
Yes.
So I was a little nervous going in. With the exception of the ending, which I had completely forgotten about, I'm happy to report I probably enjoyed it even a little bit more. Knowing things and what was happening, it was easier to focus on performances and directorial choices, things like that. So I actually had a grand old time. I enjoyed this thoroughly.
I love to hear that. So out of the batch that we watched, this was the only one that I had seen before.
Oh, okay.
And I actually had the same experience, that I loved it before, I was a little bit nervous, and it lived up to my expectations. For me, the biggest issue is that you could make a riveting story about guys calling up and making phone calls and typing letters. And yes, there were certainly some moments of action through the movie, but for the most part, it should have been a boring story.
Yes.
And it wasn't. It was very exciting and thrilling and interesting, and what was going to happen next, and there was lots of the tense moments, and they're typing and calling people on the phone. So I absolutely loved it as well.
Yeah, I think the fact that they were able to make investigative journalism an interesting and suspense-filled story, whereas nowadays they would probably over-sensationalize it and put in a little couple more action scenes of somebody shooting somebody or something just to help break it up.
Yes.
And this had none of that. It was all just pure investigative journalism. You're right, talking on the phone, going and knocking on doors, and then having the conversations about, do we have enough, do we not have enough? And all of that, I think, lent itself to a great thriller. They were able to build and sustain those tense moments throughout the entire thing. And you got to see how a story is actually built before it's put out. Like
Yes.
the constant questioning of, what's your source? Do we have enough sources? Get another source to verify before we put this information out. That part was thrilling to me, to be able to see how everything gets put together and make it exciting. I mean, the acting, of course, sustained it all, but just that little piece of being able to put everything together and watch it all happen in essentially real time was great. I love that.
Yep, totally agree. I think, one of the other things I loved is they kept, at one point you could see Robert Redford like doodling on a legal pad, so you could see his inner dialogue with, okay, thinking this, all right, well that leads to that, drawing arrows. And it's like, you could see everything that was going on in his head. You didn't need voiceover. What a clever ploy that was. I really loved that. It also, if it was not a true story, you wouldn't have believed it.
Yeah, that's true.
That's the thing.
It just seems, it's on the surface, it's so ridiculous.
Yes, it's so ridiculous. And everybody, kind of everyone who talked to them, just even seeing that happening today, you could see that happening today and they've already got a book deal.
Yep.
Or, they only want to do it on camera. Whereas these are sources who did not want to be seen and did not want to be known, but for the good of the country and the story, and even the Republican Party, they were trying to protect in some cases.
In some cases, yeah.
Yeah, they were doing that. I love that. The other thing I wrote down is Robert Redford has chemistry with a lamppost, because like Dustin Hoffman and Ben Bradley, like everyone he's with and every movie we've seen him in so far, he's got just all of the chemistry in the world.
Yeah,
so
he definitely does.
yeah. I love that. Okay, so I think I had a very different reaction to the ending, so talk about the ending.
Before we get to the ending though,
Okay.
one of the things that I know about the two of them, the actual real life Woodward and Bernstein, is that they really did not like each other that much.
I'd heard that. I wasn't sure if that was true.
And I know over the years, because of their doing this, they became tolerant and eventually, I guess, kind of friends at the end. But they really didn't like each other. And the film, I think correctly, doesn't really dive into the tension that was there. I mean, it's mentioned in the beginning, Robert Redford's character was only there for 9 months, and the other guy is not happy that he's suddenly being tagged with this young upstart who's only been there for a short period of time. But that was really it.
Yeah.
Like, they don't lean into the tension that the two of them really did actually have, and I think that was the correct choice.
I completely agree. There's like some tension here and there, but very minimal.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay, so the ending does really kind of come out of nowhere. You have a full movie, you're almost at the conclusion, and you're expecting something to happen next, and then what happened next is just a very, it's like, I don't know exactly how long it was, but film-wise, it's a relatively short montage of everything that happened because of their investigation.
Right.
Their investigation is essentially stymied at the end, and they have the information, they've moved forward, they put it out, but then nothing really happens except for at the end where you see all of the things that happened because of their investigation. To me, it was a little jarring because it's just a slew and rush of information.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if that was the right choice or not, because yes, we all know now that that their investigative journalism led to Nixon resigning because Nixon was involved in the whole process.
Right.
Nixon throughout is basically just a backdrop. He's
Totally.
not.
Totally.
They stumble onto the fact that he's involved in this. They did not suspect him at all. They were just trying to figure out who was involved. Nobody suspected Nixon, and so. Yes, we know now that that's what happened, but it's such a rush at the end that I felt it was almost too much. That I don't know how else you would have done it,
Mm-hmm.
but it just felt like, and here's what happened.
Okay. See, I
with,
felt,
with such a slow build all the way up through, and then suddenly such a rush at the end, they just did. They felt opposed to each other.
okay, so interesting. So I had the opposite reaction. I really liked the way they ended, because to me the movie was about getting the story out. And so kind of the last vision you have is them writing that
Yep.
that story that's going to really indict Haldeman and kind of get it out there. So for me, their story ends there. And everything else that happens as a result of that kind of first of many stories was the epilogue. So I liked the fact that all the
Okay,
things that
I can see
happened, because you're right, because Nixon was not a big player. It was about getting the story out. What happened to Nixon was an afterthought, was an epilogue, was a reaction to. So I was okay with, we saw them get their story, and then let's show what happens as a result of that. Because I don't know how much more, it was very exciting seeing them like do this investigative journalism. I don't know how much more you could have seen of it, and it was another year before Nixon actually resigned.
Right, and framing it like that does make a lot more sense, so I can understand why they do it, that this movie is telling their story, and their story essentially does end with the publication and putting out of everything they've investigated the first time they actually really accuse and write the story, and you see them writing at the end, like you mentioned. So that, framing it like that does make more sense to me, to then have, and this is what happened after.
Yeah.
I still question if
Still a little
you
jarring.
even needed the what happens after. Like, I honestly think I'd have to see it and know, but I might have been just fine if the credits had just started rolling as they were typing.
Okay.
I might have
can
been
see
fine.
that as well. All right, I can see that as well. I think it's interesting for the historical piece of
Sure.
it, because just even, I know a decent amount about Watergate, and so a lot of those names made sense to me, but I think about kids today who are watching it, there was a lot of names thrown out.
Oh, sure.
You know, and it would be the same time frame of if the movie was created now about, you know, and they're talking about Pelosi and Schumer and you know, these other people, they make perfect sense, they're household names, as they were when this movie came out.
Yeah.
But I wonder if it's too much thrown at people. And
Yeah.
so therefore those kind of tag on headlines don't have the same oomph as they would in that time frame.
Right. I mean, the ending just answers the question, well, what happened because
Yes.
of this? So you get an answer to that question, which would be natural if it just ended like the way I would think I want it. If they, as they're typing, you just see the credits start to roll, because the very next thing in your mind would be like, well, what happened?
Yeah.
So they answer that question. Again, I don't know. And I agree with you that there are a lot of names that are thrown around that are mentioned, like Spiro Agnew was mentioned a couple
Yeah.
times, but you don't really know in the context who that is and why
Yep.
his name is an important one.
True.
He ended up going to jail for a very long period of time.
True.
So
Go Ed Muskie, your name, you know,
so yeah, I don't know.
unfairly tagged. Mm-hmm. Good
Yeah,
movie. Good movie, held up.
absolutely. And deserved the Jason Robards, I think, did deserve the win.
Oh, he was great. Totally great.
Okay, from there then, let's move on to. I have Taxi Driver next.
All right, let's do Taxi Driver.
Okay, Taxi Driver, directed by Martin Scorsese, written by Paul Schrader, starring Robert De Niro, Jodie Foster, Sybil Shepherd, Harvey Keitel, Peter Boyle, Leonard Harris, and Albert Brooks, who I know back in the day was an all-over-the-place actor. In retrospect, it's kind of odd seeing Albert.
Oh, fully odd,
in this
yes.
movie.
Yeah.
It was nominated for Best Picture, Best Actor, Best Supporting Actress, Best Original Score. Did not win anything, but it was nominated for all of those. Fun facts.
Fun facts is that Dustin Hoffman was offered the starring role, the Robert De Niro role. He turned
Really?
it down. I read in a couple of different places that he thought that Scorsese was crazy and didn't want to work with him, and it is now one of his biggest regrets. So it would have been a very different movie with Dustin Hoffman, but an interesting one, I think.
Yeah.
And then also Jodie Foster and Robert De Niro got along wonderfully, and she really saw him as a great mentor because Martin Scorsese was apparently very uncomfortable talking to Jodie Foster about the things she would have to do and say.
Well, she was like
Because
13.
she was 12.
12.
She was 12. And Robert De Niro, she said, treated me as a colleague. He was very straightforward, and here's what we're looking for, this is what you got to do. And they, from what I heard, have remained close.
That would make sense. Like I've
But
heard a lot
from
of things,
Wikipedia, but still.
I've heard a lot of things about Robert De Niro over the years, and very few unkind things have ever
Yeah,
been said about
I agree
him.
with that.
The worst I think I've ever heard is that he tends to be slightly aloof because he's a very private person and
Mhm.
doesn't like to be. But I mean,
There are worse things.
there are far worse things.
Yeah.
Okay, so this is another one that I was a little trepidatious about going back. I will admit that I've never really been a huge fan of this movie,
Okay.
so I was hoping.
I really thought this was up your alley, so I'm surprised.
I'm not as big a fan of early Martin Scorsese movies
Okay.
as I am kind of later.
Yeah.
He seems to me like a lot of like young hungry authors, like their first novels tend to be very controversial or something just to
Yeah.
gain attention. I don't necessarily think that was his case, but admittedly his first couple of films are far more attacking of things and have subject matter that's a little bit more, whatever term you want to call it, than his later
A little
films.
shocking.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Essentially, this movie is just a very well done study of the decline of someone's mental health.
Mm-hmm.
And viewed in that way, I think the movie handled everything beautifully. I thought they set everything up to show that decline very well. There are some disjointed moments, like when they start to bring in the politics of things. I don't necessarily understand why that was necessary in a lot of cases, but fine, it was there and they used it effectively. Again, not a really big fan of this movie. I don't dislike it. I think it was handled very well. The acting and everything is phenomenal. There's something about it that I just can't dive into and be like, here we go.
I hate to say, I think we're going to agree again. I felt pretty much the same way. So this one and the next two, I have never seen, but I also had big thoughts about them.
Sure.
You know, I had my preconceived notions going.
They're all when you start talking
Oh.
about movies with people, this
Yeah.
is definitely one that will come up.
Exactly. So great De Niro performance. I thought some of it was really beautifully shot at night with the rain and the traffic lights. So I thought it was like really interesting shot. Travis Bickle is a memorable character, kind of exactly what you were saying. But it really didn't do much for me. I just didn't. I especially the end. I want to save that for a minute and talk about the end. But you're
Okay.
right. It's talking about his declining mental health, his interest in violence, the whole character with Sybil Shepherd. I thought that was actually really interesting, her take on him, because it was, oh, here's somebody who's interested in me. That's cool. Here's somebody that's not somebody that I usually date. I'll give him a chance. And then he takes her to a porn theater on the first date.
Yes.
And so you're like, okay, I'm done with you. And then it gets weird, and then it gets violent. And so it's kind of like he was a scary guy and getting scarier all the time. So I thought that was really interesting. I thought it was well done for what it was, but the one thing I really did not like was the scene. Two things I didn't like. One thing I did not like was the scene where all the violence took place. It looked very schlocky horror film.
Yeah,
to me.
kind of.
You know, the blood wasn't blood, and it didn't seem realistic, but it was also gratuitous. And what were your thoughts on that scene?
I give that a big pass because this is the 70s.
Yes.
And the
Probably what they had for production at the time.
yeah, we've seen it in blood in other 70s movies that does not look real. It does. You can tell
Yeah.
that it's fake. I think that's just the technology of the time.
Yep.
So I give that a pass. I don't, because it doesn't necessarily look realistic. That doesn't bother me because again, it's of the time, and I just
Okay.
kind of let it go. I think this is one of those scenes that scene in particular was violence over the top on purpose and
Okay.
with intent.
Okay.
Because Martin is a skilled enough director that he could have pulled any of that back at any time, but I think all of that was for intent. I think there was a point to be made. not entirely 100% sure what that point is.
Exactly.
But I think he was trying to make a point with going that far in it. I don't know.
So I haven't read it since I was probably in 11th grade, but there seemed to be a very Catcher in the Rye kind
Yeah,
of
a little bit.
thread of mental health, protection of the innocents, you know, kind of those kind of things it seemed to be a little bit of, and I just didn't think it did it all that well. So the last scene where his hair is grown back, he's back to his job, everything seems hunky-dory with him, he has a lovely interaction, or at least a cordial interaction with Sybil Shepherd, and then he like looks in the back seat, you know, that there's something in the back window, back mirror. I'm like, what, was that real? Was that a dream? Is he still in a coma in the hospital? Like, what was I supposed to take away from that?
I don't know.
Okay, all right, good. I feel better.
There are many ways you can interpret that. Yes, it could be a dream. Yes, it actually could be reality. And when he looks up into the mirror, he's starting to regress. There's tons of different ways you can interpret that. I don't think the movie is clear on what it wants you to think. I think it's intentional, left open for interpretation. I don't think there's a very clear message. I could be 100% wrong. I've never seen Martin Scorsese talk about this particular film. He probably has. He probably gave that information out. It's probably out there somewhere. Someone please let us know if you find it. But I don't know. I think it's purposely supposed to be vague, open to interpretation. That's my guess.
All right, so my biggest takeaway was, I have now seen Taxi Driver. I can check it off my list and I get the sticker. So that's my takeaway.
A couple things that even though Travis Bickle, the character, does really not like people. One of his opening phrases is, "A real rain will come and it'll wipe all the scum off the streets." That's the thing that I've heard people say, and I think they're incorrect, is that he's racist because he's talking about everybody. He even goes, I mean, he does use a racist slur when he says, "I'll even drive the spooks, I don't care."
Yeah.
But that to me is not someone being racist, because if he's saying "I don't care," then how is that?
Yeah, I guess I did not see him as racist. I saw him as equally disliking all people. Yeah.
Just a minor critique that I have, the music at certain points of it was like overwhelming and distracting. I think the editing could have been balanced out a little bit, unless again that was intentional, and if so, I don't know why you would do that, but
it felt intentional and of its time, but I didn't care for it. Yep, I agree with you.
Major props to Jodie Foster at 12. I thought she was 13, but at 12 being able to pull off that level of acting, and even though she was uncomfortable, you could tell at times that she was uncomfortable. That was a character that, and she was able to portray that very well. I've known a lot of 12, 13-year-olds that do not have any sort of depth like that.
What was the movie she was just in? The movie with Annette Bening.
Nyad.
Her performance in that was the most natural, realistic, just like two friends talking kind of movie. She is among the best actresses I have ever seen. I mean, just like best natural talent, and you can tell that at 12. I adore her.
Later, I'll tell you about an interview that I heard with her recently, where she goes into a lot of things. But,
interesting. Okay. You don't want to share with the audience?
No, because it's long.
Okay.
All right. So yeah, Taxi Driver. Never been a huge fan. Did not change my mind watching it this time. It's well crafted. I just question a lot of the choices that were made, and it just leaves me going, why? Like, why was this done? Because the movie does not really set you up in any particular way. So it's fine. I know it's on tons of people's like top 10, top 20s list. Just, I guess not for me.
Again, I got my film buff punch card punched, so I'm good.
Okay. What do you want next?
How about Network next?
All right. Network, directed by Sidney Lumet. Written by Patty Chayefsky, produced by Howard Gottfried and Fred C. Caruso, stars Faye Dunaway, William Holden, Peter Finch in his final film role apparently, Robert Duvall, Wesley Addy, Ned Beatty, and Beatrice Straight. Nominated for Best Picture, Best Director, Best Actor, Best Actress, Best Supporting Actor, Best Actress, Best Screenplay, Best Cinematography, Best Film Editing, and it won for Screenplay, Supporting Actress, and Best Actress for Faye Dunaway, and Best Actor for Peter Finch. who received it posthumously because apparently he died like 3 months before the movie came out.
I heard that as well. All right, so my fun fact is, you know the woman who played the Patty Hearst-like character, the one who was kind of sort of kidnapped into the Lebanese army?
Yeah, yeah.
She was played by Kathy Cronkite, Walter Cronkite's daughter. And one of the reasons that she was an actress and she's done a few things, has some credits, but one of the reasons she was picked was because of the subject matter and being Walter Cronkite's daughter. They wanted a little cachet there.
Okay. I have nothing else for you.
Oh.
So I think this was the second time I've seen it. Maybe I'd seen it
Okay.
before. I did not remember how I felt or anything really about it except for the overall premise of the movie, like those vague kind of things that you have in the back of your head.
Right.
So this time it was like I was watching it for the first time again. You know how much I love an opening? I thought the opening was fantastic. Set everything completely up. Guys like, hey, I'm gonna kill myself. Everybody tune in and awake, and
Yep.
you'll be able to watch it.
Yep. And no one's paying attention.
Yep.
He's just like doing his thing. Yeah.
And then that sets up the premise of the movie, and then everything, of course, happens after that. To me, this is very much commentary on a lot of things, but media, what is news, the financial aspects of things, and at certain points, it almost becomes farcical rather than just dramatic. Like
Yes.
all the scenes with Faye Dunaway's character, I think were beautifully handled and excellently done, but at points it just does turn into a farce. Like when you have the revolutionaries in the room and they're talking about market share, like
Yeah.
that's a farce.
It is actually marketed, this movie, as a satire or farce, which I did not know.
Oh, okay.
Yes, yeah, so like a couple of places where you look it up, and like IMDb and a couple of other places talk about it as a dramatic farce, dramatic satire. I thought it was straight drama when I watched it and when I always have been thinking of it. So again, totally, it was all over the place
Yep.
for me, and that was purposeful, which I did not realize.
So in looking at it in that lens, because again, I was like you, I thought it was just going to be straight up
Yeah.
drama. So when those kind of over the top
Yeah.
moments happen, it takes me out a little bit, and then then I have to get back into it. Did that work for you then? Now knowing that it was supposed to be a dramatic farce.
No, it did not work for me.
Okay.
Pieces of it worked very well for me. For instance, when you looked at Peter Finch's over-the-top performance, it made sense for him and for his character and for what he was trying to do, and all of that made perfect sense. When then Faye Dunaway gets over the top, or when they devolve into, we're going to try to market it this way, market it that way, okay, we're going to kill a guy, that did not work for me. The one scene that actually did work for me was the radicals talking about the market share. I thought that was hilarious. You've got somebody who is a true terrorist who's got a gun, who shoots it, and then you've got all of these, kind of white bread lawyers that are sitting around like, okay, well, let's turn to section 1B7. I thought that was actually really funny, on purpose funny now, but that's one of the only scenes that worked for me in that kind of farcical way.
So I agree.
Mm-hmm.
And that scene is obviously one of the big ones that stands out for
Yeah.
the farce. But the entire movie does, from the very beginning, because there are moments that are so over the top, particularly with Peter's character,
Yeah.
that you're in a drama and you're following the drama and you're really enjoying the dramatic portion of it,
Yes.
and then boom, you're out of it into a
Yeah.
farce, and then now you're back into a drama. So that back and forth totally did not work for me.
Neither, because William Holden is in a drama
Yes.
from the beginning of the movie to the end of the movie. He and his wife are talking about their marital issues, and there was nothing satiric or farcical about that at all. And then Faye Dunaway started in a drama and then went into a farce, and then to me Peter Finch was always in a farce. So like I didn't understand that, because when they were interacting with each other, it was odd.
Yeah, I don't know. Obviously, they made
Yep.
the film and they made it this particular way, so a lot of these were conscious choices.
Yeah.
I just question why. Like a little bit of balance or embracing more.
Or go off the deep end.
Yeah, I think would have worked. Like if Robert Altman had done this, it would have been 100% farce.
Yes.
If Scorsese had done it, it would have been far deeper and darker and
Yes.
much more of a drama. Like, so the way that this director chose to pick and have those tones go over the place, I wonder honestly if that was outside influence and he was trying to make one movie and they
Maybe.
changed it,
Yeah.
or if that was his choice. Because the documentary on Faye that we just watched
Yeah.
on Max,
Yeah.
she talks about it and how much she respected it, loved it, and this was her Academy Award that she won.
She did a great job.
Um,
In whatever she was doing.
Yeah.
I just didn't know. I didn't follow along for the ride.
And she mentioned that obviously it was commentary on what was happening at the time,
Yeah.
and so the movie possibly makes more sense watching it then
Mm-hmm.
than it does now.
Yes and no. I mean, the commentary they're making of ratings matter more than news
Yeah.
is like what we're living on in today. I mean, the
100%.
media making the news is
Yeah.
what we are living in today. So it does make sense. I wanted that scene when they're all deciding, okay, well, what are we going to do about Peter Finch? Well, we're going to have to kill him. And everyone's like, yeah, we're going to have to kill him. And then you have, I think it was Wesley Addy's character who was like, well, are you seriously saying this? There was no moral conversation whatsoever. There was one guy saying, okay, we're really going to do this? And that was it.
Yeah.
I wanted more drama. I would have been okay with, okay, they came to this terrible, horrible conclusion, and they're very Machiavellian, and it makes sense for them. But it wasn't. It was just a, yep, this is what we're going to do for ratings. Let's do it. It was very strange.
Yeah, the movie to me is problematic because it can't make up its mind what it wants to be, so it
Yeah.
ends up being in moments so many different things that there's no real cohesive tone or anything to it throughout. So like I said, I was in it, I was out of it, I was in it, I was out of it. Like Faye Dunaway was amazing. She was a revelation, as you like to say. She was wonderful. Everybody else, they were fine for what they were doing, but they were opposed to each other often. You know?
Yes. Yep.
So I don't know.
One question for you
Yeah.
was the romantic storyline with her and William Holden.
Yep.
Necessary?
No.
Enjoy it? Add anything to the movie?
It was fine, but again, it was one of those that because that was dramatic, if they were going to explore that and have that folded in, like if her relationship with him ended up meaning something later,
Right.
then fantastic, but ultimately it really doesn't, except for you have the moment where she ends up basically firing him,
Yeah.
and okay, we knew that was coming because you were on the rise and you were going to gain control and you were going to fire him even if you were sleeping with him. You probably still would have slept with him, but
Yeah.
he's not going to after you fire him.
Yeah, probably not.
So, like, did it matter? It was fine while they were doing it. The scenes were well done.
Yeah.
But was it necessary for the movie? I don't really think so.
In a drama, it would have been more interesting.
Yes.
In this farce, it was not. And it gave William Holden more things to do. And I thought he was actually really good in this movie. I thought he probably would have been my best actor tap because I think he was nominated as well against Peter Finch. So I wonder if it was the
He was
kind of
nominated.
sympathy vote a bit.
He was nominated.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so it's kind of all over the place, and I don't like movies that do that. Make a choice, stick with it, give me something.
Yep.
This one did not, so it was problematic.
Agreed. Okay.
Okay,
On to Rocky.
the last one, Rocky.
Mhm.
Rocky is a 1976 American sports drama film. I gotta stop copying and pasting because whoever's writing this is just bad. Directed by John G. Avildsen, written by and starring. So this was, a lot of people don't know that he actually wrote this.
Mm-hmm.
So it was written by Sylvester Stallone, stars Sylvester Stallone. It's the first installment of the major Rocky film franchise. Also stars Talia Shire, Burt Young, Carl Weathers, and Burgess Meredith. Produced by Robert Chartoff and Irwin Winkler. It was nominated for Best Picture, Best Director, Best Actor, Best Actress, Best Supporting Actor, Best Original Screenplay, Best Film Editing, Best Original Song, Best Sound. It won for Editing, Director, and Best Picture.
Okay.
Fun facts.
Fun facts were obviously he is the person who wrote it. He has written all of the Rocky scripts for all of the Rocky movies. His original script had a very different ending in which he threw the fight and he and Adrian opened their own pet store. So, very different movie right there.
Yes.
And also because this was he was offered a lot of money for the script and would not take it because they didn't want him.
Yes.
And so he waited until somebody actually made the offer for him to get it as well. Because of that, along with that, they cut the budget for the movie. It was a very low budget movie.
Yep.
There were a lot of mistakes in the movie. that he wrote into the script so that people wouldn't think they were authentic, such as the scene where he's talking about they've got the wrong shorts on the poster of him.
Okay.
The prop people put the wrong shorts on the poster of him, and so he wanted to call that out as a mistake made kind of in the boxing arena and the promotion of the boxing event. It was a movie mistake. And also the robe was far too big for him, and he wanted people to know that, you know, he knew that the robe was too big for him. And so they didn't have time to do another robe. So all the mistakes that were made because of low budget, he called into the script.
Okay, that's clever.
Mm-hmm.
I've always thought, because of what he became later on, like the 80s and 90s, just big budget action star, I've always thought that people have underestimated his intelligence, because he actually is a very smart person. Okay, so a fun fact for you, we did this before because this was a massive hit.
Massive hit.
So at the time when it came out, it made $224 million, the equivalent of 1.3 billion.
Holy cow, okay.
And it was made for, you're correct, the budget was very low, it was slightly less than $1 million to make this.
Wow, okay.
Okay. Fourth, fifth time seeing this, something like that.
Okay.
A couple summers ago, I went through I was bored and just went through every Rocky movie. I think when Creed 3 came out, I was like, I'll just start at the beginning and go all the way through. Some of them are fantastic, others are just garbage. But that's what happens when you have, you know, big franchise like this. It's gonna have problems as well. This was your first time?
My first time seeing it.
Okay, so your instant reaction once the movie starts, because it does start in a very particular way. You're instantly in the neighborhood, you get to know this character immediately. What were your initial thoughts?
So the initial thoughts were, okay, this is the movie I thought it was going to be. This kind of, and I actually really like Sylvester Stallone, because I do know that he's a smart guy and he wrote the film. But I'm like, okay, yep, this is the movie I thought it was going to be. It's this gut guy, kind of low-income guy who's, you know, boxing for his money, and then it's going to be an underdog, and it's going to be all boxing all the way through. And it was not the movie I thought it was going to be.
It's really
It
not.
totally threw me, because the first scene, I'm like, yep, this is what I thought it was going to be. And then they just pull the rug out from under me, and there's such a sweetness in this movie, a vulnerability in the character, and a sense of time and place and who he is. I enjoyed it so much more than I thought I was going to.
Yeah, a lot of people that see the first Rocky in particular for the first time, they have a preconceived notion of what it is because of all the other things that end up becoming kind of one-trick ponies.
Like Mr. T is going to come out, and then you know the guy from Russia is going to come out, and like that's what Rocky means to me in my head. And this was not that at all.
No, not at all. It has such nuance to it that people are always surprised by how well crafted everything actually is. The attention to detail, primarily because that was actually Sylvester's life.
Yeah.
So it was very easy to add in these kind of things and be this thing. Yeah. So it does absolutely 100% ring of authenticity.
Yes.
From the beginning all the way through to the end. Rocky essentially he's kind of your moral filter. He's the moral for not only the film, but he's also just a good dude in the neighborhood taking care of people. Like he's not corruptible in that he's not going to give up what he believes in. He'll do things like he does go beat people up for money.
But he's not going to break their thumb if they're going to give him most of the money. Like that. So the moment I buckled down and thought, like, okay, this is not the movie I thought it was going to be, was when he goes through his list. He doesn't break the guy's thumb. Puts on his glasses. Like I'm like, oh, okay, this is not the Rocky I thought he was.
Yeah.
So I interrupted your flow though.
No, that's fine. It's just so authentic that it's hard to pull it apart, because even if you don't like aspects of it, that's okay. You don't have to necessarily like every aspect of it, but it is 100% what it is. It does not shy away. It embraces fully the story that it is trying to tell. And I'm, like I've said a couple times in this, I'm a sucker for any film that is 100% itself, no matter what that film is.
Yep.
And from start to finish, this is 100% exactly what it wants to be.
Exactly. And I have the same things about him. He was a sweet guy, vulnerable, loyal to his friends, tough, trying to get along in the world, trying to make his neighborhood a good place to live, you know, trying to get the attention of the girl he likes, you know, and that was all. I thought that their relationship was very, very sweet as well.
One of my favorite lines is when he's asking her to move in with him, and he just basically says, "Do you want a roommate?"
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Like, that's just great.
I
And
thought she asked him. I thought she said, "Do you want a roommate?"
yes, you're right. You're right. I'm
Yeah,
sorry.
but still, and he's like, "Absolutely," and it was just like so sweet. Yeah.
We probably should admit that the brother, Polly, his character changes, but he is such a dick.
I hope he changes because there's nothing likable about him. He's a caricature. It's just like one whole scene is watching him stagger home.
Yeah.
Like I didn't really need that. So.
He has an arc and goes
Okay.
through things in the next 2 movies, I think.
Good.
As does Burgess Meredith's character, who like, even though he is a one-trick pony in this movie, he is the perfect one-trick
Yeah.
pony.
He brings something to this character. I don't know what he brought, but I liked him. And Polly I just had no use for.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
The ending. You said that there was a different ending that was written, but they didn't film that one.
Yeah.
What did you feel of the ending? Do you think it was as strong as the rest of the film, or did it kind of like, was it a little weak at the end?
I thought it was fantastic. I loved the ending because the ending was about he just made it through the rounds. That's it. And again, it's like
Yeah, he didn't win.
He didn't win. But he held his ground. He made it through the rounds. And again, like I said about him, is the character just needs to get through life. He just wants to get through with his integrity, and that's what he did. He didn't stay down when they told him to stay down. He got up because he wanted to stay. Like that was where the cheers came in. Is he got up when he didn't have to. His girl was there. I thought it was a beautiful ending. I thought it was a beautiful moment.
Some people have criticized, and I'm not one of them, but I'll throw this criticism out to see what you think, that the premise of the fight itself is kind of weak. That the heavyweight champion of the world would fight a nobody who's never really fought.
I thought that was kind of stupid, but I'm like, okay, but here's how we get here. So what, you disagree?
I do, because the first time I saw it, I was like, well, that's kind of a weak premise, but then you forget about it, it doesn't matter anymore.
Yeah.
It's just something to get from point A to point B. But the way that they actually frame it, I think they give you enough information as to why they're doing it. All of his actual real heavyweight fights, he wins all the time, people are bored.
Yeah.
So he wants to have essentially an exhibition match to show that he can actually still fight. And so this is not a title match, it's not anything like that, it's this, I'm going to show people that I can still fight.
Okay.
And he didn't expect it to last nearly as long, but he wanted to get people back on his side to get him ready for the next big heavyweight fight. Because they mentioned that his past couple, like people, like the attendance gone down, people just not caring anymore.
I think I didn't get that. I think I didn't pick up on that nuance, and you saying that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
I thought the Apollo Creed arc was really interesting too, because you can tell he's a guy who kind of came up, and now he's it. He's the man, and it's all about the promotion and the marketing and the clothes and the the fanfare of it. And then he gets in the ring with somebody who knocked him down when he has not been knocked down. And you could see his pride and his like, oh my God, I got to really show who I am. I liked the arc of Apollo through this as well.
Nice.
Mm-hmm.
This is, I don't really have many criticisms. It's just, it's fun, and it's not the movie that people think it actually is. It is so much better than people think it actually is. In fact, it almost doesn't deserve to be as good as it is. I don't know what it is, but it's just amazing. It really is.
I really liked it. I thought it was great. The other thing too, it's forever entwined with Sylvester Stallone's underdog story.
Yeah.
So like that's the thing I kind of like about this movie is an underdog story, and him getting the movie made with him as the star is an underdog story.
And also we should probably mention the soundtrack, the like iconic. Like,
it's just like Jaws. We were talking about the other day. Is you just need a few notes and you are there.
Knows.
Yeah. Liked it very much.
If you've ever been to Pennsylvania, Philly, where they did the movie, and there's that statue. That statue is actually really there, and everybody there goes and does the thing.
Yeah, I would totally do the thing. Yeah.
Sure.
If I made it up the stairs.
So I don't have a lot, except for this is just, this is like Jaws. It is incredibly well done and a lot of fun.
Yes, I had a lot of fun with it.
Those are hard movies to do. Like a lot of well-crafted movies, it's kind of a struggle to get to sometimes, even though you're appreciating the brilliance of what's actually happening. Sometimes they can be a struggle.
Yes.
This one, and just like Jaws, they're not. They're just like, I'm in. This is fun and really good.
Well, and I am just not a boxing fan. It's difficult to watch. It's not fun for me to watch guys beat each other up. So I was a little reluctant to watch it, and it's not boxing. You know, it's not about boxing. Boxing is in it, and there are some really well shot scenes of boxing, but it's not a boxing movie.
No, the later ones definitely are boxing movies.
Okay.
They become incredibly
Yeah,
formulaic.
I think I have seen maybe, I saw the 3 or 4 with the Russian character, so
Okay,
I
that's
do remember
4,
that, yeah.
The second one, I would suggest you watch Rocky 2 because it's not quite as good as this, but it's still the same tone, the same
Okay.
so it doesn't become the parody of itself until like 3.
After seeing this, I would absolutely see Rocky 2.
Yeah, and I don't know when it came out. We'll have to look, but it may have been nominated for Best Picture too because it is really, really well done. It's
Okay.
like this caliber, a little bit less, but this caliber.
Okay, cool.
All right.
So of the 4 we could find.
Yes. So as I mentioned, the winner for 1975 was indeed Rocky.
Yes.
So I'm going to take a guess, and I'm going to say that you agree that Rocky should have won, and if you're going to say no, then I know the movie that you think should have won.
I'm going to say no.
Okay, then All the President's Men.
All the President's Men.
Yeah.
And what are your thoughts?
I think Rocky should have won. I think
Okay.
All the President's Men is a phenomenal movie. Like I said, it's very
Yeah.
dear to my heart. But everything about Rocky does overshadow All the President's Men as a film. Particularly, All the President's Men is definitely a '70s movie.
Yeah.
100%. Rocky does kind of step out of that. It becomes a period piece now rather than just a movie in the '70s. Do you know what I mean?
I actually do, yeah. That does make sense to me.
But having said that, I think All the President's Men is a phenomenal, phenomenal film.
I feel like it's a 1-2 super close. It's, yes, the fact that Rocky won, I don't think is a bad thing by any stretch, but I think All the President's Men just a little bit more kept me just a little more riveted, a little more engaged. And part of that is just the type of movie that it was. It's
Sure.
a thriller versus a drama.
Yep.
But yeah, I think Rocky was so much better than I expected, and yet I would have just gone one click higher for All the President's Men. Rocky was great.
Yeah. I think Rocky should have won. I was happy with that choice. And again, I do agree with you that they are so incredibly close. And I think probably my affinity towards this, having seen it so many times, and the fact that it is something that does stand up over time,
Yeah, it does.
is probably what leans me in that particular direction.
Fair. Okay, so this is the first time that we have disagreed and not violently disagreed with
Yeah.
one another. Because on a couple of them, you know, when you
Well,
were wrong,
you were so
when you were
incredibly
wrong, then that was one thing. But I'm like, okay, I see your point.
One quick fascinating fact before we end that I forgot to mention in the
Yes.
beginning. The previous podcast, we talked about being in 3 movies that particular year. Jack Nicholson was in 3 movies.
Yes.
This year, Robert De Niro was in 3 movies.
Oh, what was he?
Taxi Driver, The Last Tycoon, and 1900.
I have not seen the other 2.
I
Have you?
haven't either, but
Okay, interesting.
yeah. So again, we're seeing the rise of stardom and people really wanting to work in movies.
Yes. Yep.
Even though-
And we're seeing the same actors over and over again too. And even in some of these, like seeing like James Caan was considered for one of these roles. I forget which one. I think it was Taxi Driver. He was like, oh no, it was Rocky. He was considered for Rocky when they didn't want to go Stallone. It was Ryan O'Neal and James Caan were a couple that they were considering.
Ryan O'Neal?
Well, he was again. He was the #1 drama at this point. You know. Barry Lyndon, that's the reason that Kubrick could get that made. So he was in a later boxing movie.
What the hell is wrong with people?
He was in a later boxing movie with Barbara Streisand in 1980, The Main Event.
Oh, yeah. I think
but
I've actually seen that.
He would be horrible in this movie.
Yeah.
Don't get me wrong. It's totally wrong choice.
See, to me, and I apologize, but Ryan O'Neal is the very quintessential example of a movie star, not an actor.
Yes, I
And
agree with that.
I've never really dug on that. Like, no.
And he's just too pretty.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Anyway, do the liking and subscribing, commenting, all that good stuff. Thank you very much. And until next time.